This video contains minor spoilers for Xenoblade Chronicles X, mostly for Affinity missions. The most important moment in Xenoblade X comes at the very beginning, the destruction of Earth and launch of interstellar arcs all across the globe. While this is an incredible opening that sets up the game really well, I found myself constantly wondering about Project Exodus in my 100+ hour journey through the game. I found myself wondering how the hell you are supposed to make the difficult choice made by the people of Earth. I'm Ouroboros, and this is the Project Exodus dilemma. For the uninitiated, Project Exodus, also sometimes referred to as the Earthlife Colonization Project, or ECP, was the effort made by the Earth Coalition government to ensure the survival of humanity after the destruction of the planet. They knew the war was coming, and this was their only choice. So you're probably thinking to yourself that, yeah, this is interesting. It gives New LA this cool sci-fi survivalist setting that doesn't often get replicated. Your city isn't thriving. In fact, when you finally wake up, it's barely surviving. But then you delve deeper into the narrative and find out that many of your crewmates who made it onto the White Whale had family members who didn't. And it's not like one or two characters who have moments where they have to deal with this. It's foundational to many of the Affinity missions and integral to so much character development. So that begs the question, how do you decide who lives and who dies? And like many ethical dilemmas, there's no right answer. No matter what you decide, there are going to be so many people who are left to die on Earth because they didn't make the cut. So, like any functional government, they start to choose based on skills. Lynn is given a spot because she's a prodigal engineer. Elma makes it on board because she's a phenomenal and high-ranking soldier. Doug's test pilot skills landed him on the White Whale. You get the idea. Of course, you have to have strong leadership during these times, which is where Vandham and Nagi come into play. Even some of these characters have family members who didn't make it onto the ship. How do you deal with that? Seriously, not only do you have to deal with humanity's potential extinction, but you also have to live on knowing that your family members won't make it. All the while, you and your crewmates are frantically preparing for the voyage ahead. It's brutalistic social Darwinism, and I can't even find any fault with this ideology. Imagine for a second that you're in charge of selecting who gets to live and who stays back on Earth. What would you do? Who would you take? But more importantly, who would you leave behind? And that's the bigger question for me. What would you prioritize in this do or die situation? Do you go all in on science, recruiting the best engineers and scientists to hopefully be able to maintain all vital functions and be able to effectively understand whatever planet you live on? What about agriculture? You're going to need food to feed all those mouths unless you want to feed them Tang for the rest of their lives. What about art and culture? What do you bring along with you? Those things aren't necessary for survival. You don't need art or music or movies or novels. But are we alive without those? How much should you invest in leadership? You need a definitive chain of command to survive, but too much could cause infighting, too little, and you end up with a crew who doesn't respect their captain. I just can't stop thinking about what I would do if I were in this situation. What would I want to preserve from Earth, our cradle, our only planet we've known for the lifetime of our species? Who lives, who dies? In essence, the leadership of Project Exodus is, for a very brief speck of time, God. They are playing God with the species because of the immense importance of their mission. It's a position I hope nobody ever finds themselves in. That's not to say it hasn't happened before. Of course, on a smaller scale, a military leader does have to make cold decisions like this, but not something this massive. And what happens when humans play God? People get angry, real angry. Whenever you go through Affinity missions with party members and this topic pops up, there are usually one of two stages of grief. They're either depressed or really pissed off. Sometimes you end up with a character who has accepted the past but not really moved on. It's usually anger or depression though. For example, when you go through Irina's questline, you learn that her brother didn't make it on board, despite being pretty qualified to be a part of the ECP. Even this far into it, she can't get over her brother's death. Lynn even acknowledges that she's suicidal during all of this, which, I mean, can you really blame her? That's some serious survivor's guilt, even though it was literally not her fault. Or you have Fry and Fogg, whose father didn't make it aboard the ship, one of which is an extremely talented soldier, the other not even remotely. He's a stellar engineer, but has never been a good fighter. Fogg, while he still mourns for his father, has more or less accepted what has happened. That's not to say that he's moved on, but he's in a better place than most other people. On the other hand, his brother wholly blames him. If it weren't for Fogg, his dad would still be around, and maybe, just maybe, NLA would be a better place. And of course, you have Lau, a man who blames the coalition government for the death of his family. He is the embodiment of the anger felt by so many of the crew. He believes that the government prioritized saving themselves over the lives of the people they were supposed to protect. The thing is with Lau, I don't necessarily blame him for the way he feels. That's the great thing about all of these characters. You can't blame any of them for their emotions. While I think that some of them might feel underdeveloped, their raw emotions, whether objectively good or bad, are incredibly realistic. Like, do I think Lau is right in saying that the government wanted to save themselves rather than others? Yeah, that's honestly probably something that would happen in real life, but also, if you were in charge of Project Exodus, wouldn't you save yourself if you could? And surprisingly, the government of NLA is not really that corrupt. I mean, you kind of expect it at this point with JRPGs. You can just never trust the church or the government or, well, God, I guess. I think the dilemma posed by Xenoblade X is really intriguing. I find myself thinking about it constantly, and even though Definitive Edition has been out for what, like 8 months now, I still find myself wondering how anyone could possibly tackle such an impossible task. How anyone could possibly live with themselves through this whole process. How anyone could live while their families die. The government played God with the human race, and yet, I can't blame them. There were no other alternatives. They had to be cold and calculating in order to ensure the survival of the human species. Project Exodus is one of the most thought-provoking ethical dilemmas I've seen in games, and it's ever present, whether at the forefront or in the background of nearly every Xenoblade X interaction. Thanks for watching.